Sorry about that. So at the beginning of this essay, bell hooks has this really kind of wonderful quotation where she talks about the real world. So I'm going to start at the beginning and just kind of read this beginning passage. Teachers who have a vision of democratic education assume that learning is never confined solely to an institutionalized classroom, rather than embodying the conventional false assumption that the university setting is not the so-called real world, which is still something I constantly hear people say, and teaching accordingly. The democratic educator breaks through the false construction of the corporate university as set apart from real life and seeks to re-envision schooling as always a part of our real world experience and our real life. So when I am talking about ethnography, when I'm sort of shaping my comments, the research that you're doing and the work that you're doing for this class, when I'm making comments for you, I want you to really think about the fact of this classroom as a space where you are being invited to really work through your learning as an engagement with your actual lived experience, your lives. So, we tend to kind of go into the classroom and think of it as this preparatory space where we're doing thought experiments, right? We're writing papers that aren't really about that are about real things, but not necessarily directed to a real audience. Trying to satisfy, an individual teacher's demands, despite knowing that we're going to go out and be exposed to people who are not teachers, who have very different expectations, different communication styles, and different experiences and ideas about what's valuable. And so therefore, right, our work that we do for a classroom, our expression in a classroom can feel very phony, right? Very rigid and very, from our own points of view, not expressive of how we would really, not reflective of how we would express ourselves in even a professional context, let alone a personal context. So bell hooks is somebody who's really interested in thinking about our learning as something that is just part of our life, right? If I graduate from school and I go and I take a class on knitting, I'm still learning. I'm still part of the learning community, just as I was when I was in a formal schooling situation. So really thinking about the space of the classroom as a learning environment is something that we're trying to do in this class. And it's really difficult because we are online. This is a recorded, this is me having just waken up from a nap and having 15 minutes to do a lecture. And, and here I am trying to muddle my way through it. And you're going to watch it and hopefully you'll get something out of it, right? So we're not engaged with each other. You're not asking me questions. I'm not really talking to you, right? I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to a computer, right? So it's very difficult to kind of think about what a democratic education might look like in that context, even from reading bell hooks. But I think that we can think about it in that context when we are really kind of honed in on the idea of exploration that bell hooks is really trying to get us to think about, right? So if you look at, for example, she continues on with her real world stuff, and then she says, this is something at the end that I want to highlight. Actually, I'll just read the whole paragraph. To bring a spirit of study to learning that takes place both in and beyond classroom settings, right? In this class, we're talking about education in our projects, but we're also experiencing education outside of the classroom setting. Learning must be understood as an experience that enriches life in its entirety. Quoting from T.H. White's The Once and Future King, Parker Palmer celebrates the wisdom Merlin the magician offers when he declares, quote, "The best thing for being sad is to learn something." Don't those words penetrate your soul after the pandemic, right? The best thing for being sad is to learn something. So many of my students during the pandemic taught themselves how to cook, how to play an instrument, how to do art, right? Several of my students learned how to knit. So everybody was sad, and everybody remedied that through self-education, right? It was very, very exciting to see so many people understand that education isn't something that happens necessarily on somebody else's, you know, time and effort, right? Somebody else doesn't need to always tell you what you're learning and how to learn and blah, 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 blah. You get to decide. So anyway, to continue, that is the only thing that never fails. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. What a cute reference to an animal. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the thing for you. Parker adds to this declaration his own vital understanding that, quote, education at its best, this profound human transaction called teaching and learning, is not just about getting information or getting a job, pause, full stop, right? Education is about healing and wholeness. That is the only thing that education is about right now, right? We're all trying to heal from the pandemic. We're all trying to grapple with what happened, and we're all trying to remind ourselves that there is this thing called wholeness that we're aiming for, and we hope that we encounter people along the way who understand that as well and who help us. It is about empowerment, liberation, transcendence, about renewing the vitality of life. It is about finding and claiming ourselves and our place in the world. Since our place in the world is constantly changing, we must be constantly learning to be fully present in the now. If we are not fully engaged in the present, we get stuck in the past and our capacity to learn is diminished, right? That is very, very important. And it's not just stuck in the past. A lot of students get stuck in the future too, right? Future, 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 future. And then you forget that you're actually alive and that you're doing things and that you're experiencing things physically in space, in time. And so what Bell Hooks is really talking about, and BTW, a practitioner of meditation and yoga, this wonderful, beautiful human being, Bell Hooks, what a democratic education looks like isn't simply an education that is inclusive of everyone. It isn't simply an education that sees the classroom as an opportunity to get to know different experiences, different perspectives, other minds, and to be engaged with them. It's also fundamentally about embracing the now, right? The current moment, where you are, being present for yourself and for others, right? So if I had to really give you the full synopsis of what this beautiful article is embracing and teaching you to do, is to get comfortable with your learning process, to embrace your learning process, and to really lay claim to the fact of a learning environment, whether that's online or in person. It really doesn't matter, right? It's just how you engage with it, that these things are opportunities for really being inside of your life, right? Right now, I'm at home, my kid's about to walk through the door any minute to take me somewhere, and I'm trying to finish this thing for you, and I'm in the moment, right? Because I love Bell Hooks, I care about this stuff, and I want you to care about it with me, right? I want us to have a learning moment together, right? An exploration together. So just to wrap it up, please read the Bell Hooks. You don't really need me to break it down for you. It's actually tells you quite a bit that you need to know yourself, right? Which is what I just said, embracing the now, thinking about authoritarian practices in the classroom, which is really you're going to be thinking a lot about bad kinds of education, right? Authoritarian practice promoted and encouraged by many institutions undermines democratic education in the classroom, right? That's when you feel like, why am I sitting in a classroom with a teacher who seems like they're, it's all about their rules and regulations and this and that, instead of a learning environment that's inviting us all to kind of participate in some way. And it's actually quite difficult to achieve that kind of learning environment in today's as bell hooks tells us, kind of corporate learning environment, right? We're not invited to communicate with each other. We're not invited to have multiple points of view. It's actually quite difficult to engage with each other, especially after the pandemic, when a lot of us came out of that feeling that we had a lot of social anxiety, and then teachers especially, are not prepared to deal with that social anxiety, because a lot of them have the same problem, right? A lot of them are also dealing with social anxiety. So really thinking about, the bad kinds of education, and then from bell hooks's point of view, the converse of that, right? So if you have, getting in the right mindset to confront the trauma and the negative aspects of institutionalized education, then the upside of that is what she refers to as radical openness. And radical openness is the power that diminishes the status quo politics of what she refers to as class elitism, right? What is class elitism, right? Class elitism is just like, for me, it's like the people who succeed the most are the ones who know how to navigate the system best. They know that school is really just about, getting ahead, right? Social, either maintaining your status as your high social status, or trying to go move up the ladder, right? What people refer to as social mobility, right? But what radical openness does is it says, okay, that's not the only reason why we're in school, right? Some of us may feel that that's the only reason that we're in school, but if we're really thinking about democratic education, we're also thinking about school and learning as an opportunity to challenge the status quo, to challenge received order of values, right? To question and use resources to question our environments, and to empower ourselves in those environments to make happen the things that we would like to see happen, right? For ourselves, for our families, and for each other as a society. So that's a kind of idea of what a democratic educator is. Now, the last thing that I'll say about that is, that your task this week is to really kind of begin to think about field work. I highly encourage you to read the example of the environmental observation example from my publication, which is, the title is El Monte. It's by a student of mine. And really kind of think about taking an environment that might be completely, in some ways, obvious to you, right? So the author of El Monte walks around a neighborhood that he's lived in his entire life, except for this time he's walking around that neighborhood as an ethnographer who's doing field work on his own community. So if you're doing field work on your own community, that means you're taking notes and you're looking at things from a new perspective, right? Not just I'm trying to live here and have a life, but I am looking around at the architecture, the behavior, the way that the community moves, the way that it lives, the way that decisions that have been made for it without its own power shape how people perceive and interact with each other. Really beginning to take stock of the way in which urban space, especially, or suburban space, is planned. So thinking about why do we have these lawns with, why do we live in houses with fences around them? Why do we live in spaces that don't encourage us to interact with each other, right? What is that about? Why is that? And then really just kind of putting yourself in that position and beginning to really kind of think not only about your project and the work that you want to do for that project in terms of the the world as a kind of field site that you're studying, but also the space of our classroom, the space of the online environment, right? You could do an entire project on the online environment, doing school from the so-called comfort of your own home, right? And it's not comfortable for many of us. It's actually the opposite of that. It's very alienating. It can feel pointless. It can feel fake. It can feel that you're being asked to pretend that you don't have all of this life going on around you for the purposes of prioritizing your work and your school, right, at your desk. That, to me, as a human being, is terrifying, right? The idea that I'm actually supposed to not only diminish the value of my experiences at school, but I'm also now expected to diminish the value of my experiences in my home space where I now work, right? So this is why a course like this is absolutely imperative right now, to begin to ask ourselves the important questions. Why have we come out of this pandemic? Why have we come out of this extremely important moment in the history of human life? And instead of being asked to contribute to a repository of information that asks us how we felt about it, we are instead being asked to go back to the norm, maintain the status quo, and forget about everything, right? So this class is not going to ask you to do that, right? This class is going to ask you to contribute to a repository of information about your experiences, about how you feel about education, and really begin to think about how the pandemic has kind of maybe reconfigured your perspective on education. Or if you hadn't thought about it until now, maybe now you will, right? You have the chance to kind of reflect back, and you'll have the time and the space to do that in this course. So I hope that helped everybody. And like I said, please give the bell hooks a chance. It's not a very long read. It's only 5 pages. And I would say, pretty much every single page is chock-a-block full of really, really powerful statements that you can then use in your research. Feel free to quote, and feel free to use any of the sources that I've given you, that I provided for you, as the groundwork for building your own projects. Okay, welcome to the class.